Hi, this is Joe Maker with the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society Cultivating Community Gardens Histories Project or the Community Garden Memory Project. Today's date is August 10, 2022, and I'm here on Zoom recording an interview with two amazing gardeners currently at Glen Foerd Community Garden in Northeast Philadelphia. So could you please introduce yourselves?
Well, my name is Pat Lyons, and I work with individuals to kind of access their community, get involved with opportunities to build new relationships. And we had been, well, let me introduce Ryan here. Hey, Ryan, you want to say hi?
Hi,
So we would like you to tell everyone your name.
my name is Ryan Curley.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay. I'd love to hear more about your work together. But before we really get into your current work gardening, Pat and Ryan, I'd like to ask you both, where did you grow up, and did you or your neighbors have gardens there?
Why don't you go first, Ryan?
When I lived over on Townsend Road, Ted Cutler Weir grew all vegetables out in his garden.
Nice. Nice.
Was that your neighbor?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I grew up in a number of different neighborhoods in Philadelphia, and always as a family, we gardened almost at every single house that I lived in. My mom was a big gardener.
Nice. Which neighborhoods do you remember in particular?
So I grew up in Crescentville and lived on Reach Street. We had a garden there. Then I moved to Feltonville, right off of the boulevard, and we lived on Rockland Street. I always had we had a garden there. Then I moved to Northeast Philly, near Burholme, and I lived on Claret Street, and we had a garden there. And then I moved to Bucks County with my mom, and we had a garden. Her house was on Street Road in Warminster. And then I went off to college, and every house that I lived in, we had a garden. So I lived in South Philly. We had a garden there. I lived in Brewery Town. I had a huge garden. I even had chickens there. And I moved to West Philly. And when I was in West Philly, I began working with folks with mental health challenges. And one of our first classrooms, because we didn't have a space at the time for a classroom, I said, let's go outside. And our first classroom was starting a community garden. And that was when I lived in West Philly on Spring Garden Street. Actually, the folks I worked with were my neighbors who had mental health challenges. And we started that community garden. We gardened there for probably 20 years. We built relationships in that community. And we also built larger relationships with the people who would come and volunteer. So one time we had people from AT&T come out and do some work with us, and we built some raised beds. And we had, we wrote a grant and we did some mural painting. Yeah, so we did a lot of fun things. We did some mosaics. We raised enough money to put in a backyard patio so people could come in and actually have lunch there or just kind of get a little respite. So yeah, so gardening is a big part of my life. And I used to take the folks that I work with now to Glen Foerd. And we would just take a walk through their beautiful grounds. And then right when they said, we're going to start a community garden, I said, we're in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You kind of skipped actually into a question I wanted to ask you later, so good to get that material straight off. But I want to double back a little bit now, though,
Sure.
to your first memories of gardening. Who taught you how to garden? I think that segues rather nicely from, in your case, your mother and the gardens that you had growing up. But what do you first remember gardening?
I don't know. I don't know if okay, I will say one very amazing fond memory that I always kind of fall back on is in my first garden, which was when I was probably maybe 3 years old, because that's how old I was at that house. I remember going out into the yard and pulling off whole tomatoes and just eating them like apples. I mean, that was something that we always did.
That's a very great memory. Yeah, and so your mother was the one who taught you how to garden. Yeah, and so it sounds like you
Yes.
had a lot of tomatoes with her. Any other plants that you really remember?
No, the tomato was just, I guess, at that age, just such a big memory, because it was to me, I guess I was really tiny and young. And so that was like this giant, red vegetable that I got to eat right off the vine. So that memory is just really strong.
Yeah, that's a good memory to have. It's fun to eat tomatoes. Ryan, what are your first memories of gardening?
Just looking at it,
Yeah, first, but any kind, anytime. So Glen Foerd could count. That's your first time gardening yourself, but
George Washington sailed across the Delaware River.
So one of the things that I'm going to help Ryan a little, we do a lot of reading. And one of the things that we read about was George Washington. And one of the first trips that I took Ryan on was going to the Delaware at Glen Foerd. And since then, we have traveled up the river to different communities. We go to Bristol and we go to the library in Bristol. And then we go further north and we go to we went to Washington's Crossing and then Lambertville. So we kind of toured the river. And because we garden there, I said, why don't we kind of follow it up a little bit? So Ryan has a very strong memory of connecting his reading to the river. And then we started gardening and we continue to do research on different topics and then try to actually find life experiences to kind of make that kind of connect. So in so many respects, the garden helps us to also learn about cooking, which we do a cooking class because independence and giving, Ryan and the other folks that I work with opportunities to have life experiences that they can really gain independence is critical. So the garden affords many opportunities to learn on many levels. And one of the things I'm gonna kind of trigger a memory for you. Do you remember when we had so many zinnias that sorry, I got a call coming through, sorry. We had so many we had so many zinnias that, what did we take out of our garden and plant at your mailbox for your mom? Do you remember that? Zinnias, yes. So we had an abundance of zinnia plants, and for his mom's birthday, we took some of those plants over and planted them at his home that was not that far away.
Oh, that's really nice, Ryan. I'm sure your mom really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think this leads pretty nicely into the question I was going to ask you next, actually, which is, I think you might have kind of already answered this question to some extent, but I want to get it on the record and talk about it more directly. You're both involved with supportive behavioral resources, right?
Correct. Yes.
Which, as I understand it, is a nonprofit organization based in Philadelphia that focuses on assisting individuals with intellectual disabilities or challenges.
So actually, I think SBR is a for-profit company, but they do work for, and support individuals with intellectual disabilities, but also autism. And the previous organization that I worked for was a nonprofit in Philadelphia. But so actually SBR is a for-profit, but they work with individuals.
So the last
that
community,
have-
So the last community garden you were with was with a nonprofit, also focused on assisting individuals with intellectual disabilities, the one at 38 Spring Garden.
That's right. So that garden, it was a community garden, but at the time I worked for actually Resources for Human Development, and that was a nonprofit. So they actually, because I was working with them and, essentially the community garden partnered with them, and we had other opportunities, to kind of get some funding to do projects, because it related to wellness and recovery. And it's very complex how many opportunities gardens give people for so many things, inclusion and giving back to their community and volunteering, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I should admit, for the sake of transparency, that I have autism, so this is a cause dear to my heart as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, but so I feel like you've already been getting at this a little bit with your discussion of how you both came to start gardening at Glen Foerd. But so how did supportive behavioral resources come to Glen Foerd Community Garden?
How did I'm sorry, say that again. How did supportive behavioral resources
come to Glen Foerd Community Garden? Or you could just say Glen Foerd, because I think you've been talking, you kind of explained that you were, walking around Glen Foerd a bit and doing all these trail journeys up and down the river. And then when Glen Foerd said that they're starting a community garden, kind of went for it. But what got you to Glen Foerd in the first place, I guess?
So I have been going there for years, and I am always looking as a educator, I consider myself an educator. I wanted to share Glen Foerd with the folks that I work with. And as a result, we would just go there and walk the trails and just hang out there. Because I'm going to be quite frank, safe places to go and hang out and beautiful places at that. I'm always looking for places. They have a few things that, to be quite frank, are like right there. There's like a porta potty there. So, I mean, it's like, there's so many things that just make it easy to be there.
Yeah.
So, so then they started to bring picnic benches. So we started to go and picnic and read there. And then the next thing I know, they had that little music area, and the beekeeper came, and they started to really develop their programming over there. And then I'm pretty sure I bumped into one of the directors, and they're like, would you be interested in joining the community garden? And I was like, are you kidding? Of course we're interested. Yes, we want to do it. So then I talked to SBR, and they were on board immediately. They were like, yes. So the first year we had one plot, and then I kind of said, could we get 2 plots? Because we want, more people to get involved. And so SBR has a plot, I have a plot. So now we garden 2 plots, and we always garden a plot of flowers for the bees. That's and the pollinators. So one garden is always dedicated to that. So we, do a lot of research about the bees, and we go to the bee festival that they have every year. So there's just a lot of incredible things that have been happening over at Glen Foerd, and it's right in, the neighborhood, so to speak. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed one of the raised beds. I noticed a lot of the raised beds seem to have flowers in them, but I definitely noticed when I visited last Friday that that one also did have so many lush flowers in it, which I can see why bees would really enjoy community gardens. Thank you for that. Yeah, bees. Yeah, but I want to quickly ask a clarifying follow-up question, which is, so have you been visiting Glen Foerd effectively since you lived in Northeast Philadelphia to start with your mother?
No, I'm trying to think what brought me there the first time. Oh, goes back pretty far. I can't believe it. I can't believe what got me there the first time. Oh, I don't know. I've been going there for so long. I don't think I went there with my mom. Yeah, I think I stumbled upon it by accident. And then I realized that it was open to the public, and I actually saw some such incredible things there. Like they have bald eagles, and they have an amazing amount of birds there. And so I would always bring folks over there hoping to kind of see different things, like, let's go see if we can see an eagle today. And and then another place we go to is Churchville Nature Center, and they have an amazing group of stuffed birds. So we kind of go there to look at those birds, and then try and find those birds in the community. So Glen Foerd, like I said, they have not falcons, they have osprey there. They have a osprey couple that pair or whatever that have been coming there, I think, for 23 years. They've been nesting there. I saw my first double, 2 eagles in a tree right on the edge of the water. Never saw 2 together, so that was interesting. And it actually created an opportunity to ask questions to other birders, like, why would two be together? And then a gentleman shared a story that actually they go out and look for a nesting place together. And then, they split up and they, I guess, do other different, hunting and all that. But in the beginning, they looked together for a nesting place. So, I think that gardens and just that amazing place is something that people can then have stories about, experiences about, and just, conversation starters are always important for my folks to be able to talk about things that are happening in their life, So gardening is a big one for us.
Yeah, yeah. The Eagles story makes you think of like, going out and looking for an apartment with like your roommate.
Yeah.
But with the
Yeah.
promise that both of you are going to, go to your separate jobs during the day, and only come back like occasionally. Very cool. But I wanted to also ask, so do you remember, tell me about the director who invited you to the community garden?
My gosh, I do have some memory issues. I'm not gonna lie. I think. Actually, you know what? This is funny. So I think I decided that I would become a member of Glen Foerd because I wanted to make a commitment to that place. And then I think Dorothy in the office kind of poked around a little bit and was like, hey, we're thinking about starting a garden. Would you be interested? So I actually think it was Dorothy, now that I think about it. And I was like, oh, yes, I would definitely be interested in a garden. I think that's when it's 5 years. I think we've been gardening there now for 5 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was just talking to Dan Coonan, who also gardens. And I think that he also has been there for all 5 years. So, and thank you, because I didn't know that Dorothy had that influence. So now I guess I got to talk to her. But I want to move to a new question related to the work that both of you have done in the garden, which is, what roles have you played in the community garden since joining?
So, do you know what he means by that, Ryan? What role? Like,
No.
Okay, so do you and I go out before we start the garden and scout for seeds and plants?
Sometimes we go to. Sometimes we go to. I don't remember.
Do you remember we've gone to Lowe's down the street?
Yes.
And we go to, remember the place with the dogs, Russell's Garden? So Ryan and I, because I see Ryan so often and we spend so much time together, Ryan and I are often the scouts who go out and get the seeds in the beginning. And so Ryan and also Aideen, we actually turn over the garden, get it prepped, and then we do we did the initial gardening, planting with Aideen this year, another person who we garden with, and then Bobby actually we just recently were there, we weeded and he waters, he loves watering. So kind of collaboratively, Ryan can't be in the heat very much. So it's been a really hard year for us because of the heat, and the heat is challenging for another one of our gardeners who is in a wheelchair, Adine. So it's a little challenging with the heat. So that has been a struggle, but I will say, which is kind of interesting, we have met another woman at the garden who Adine actually knew prior because she was the librarian at the Northeast Regional Library. So Lisa. So Lisa has offered, because we're in, communication, to water for us sometimes. And then recently we also do art projects, and we have invited Lisa to make some stepping stones, because she was talking about how it's hard to get into the middle of her garden. So actually yesterday she came to the art class that I run for both the community and the folks that I help out to do a stepping stone. So the relationship is going a little further, which is kind of exciting. I don't know if I answered your question. Sorry, went off on some tangents there.
No, I think that was really good. So you kind of enumerated the different roles that you, Ryan, and other people like Adine and Bobby, and even Lisa now also have to contribute to your plots, the SVR plot and then your plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I guess, so similarly, I was wondering if you could walk me through a year in your plots. What traditions characterize, your work with the garden and your recreation, regarding your plots and regarding the garden as a whole, any?
So typically we come out pretty early. This year we had an earlier start, which actually was really wonderful. I've learned a lot from year to year, and the weird thing is that the climate is changing. So, with it getting so hot, we decided this year to start sooner, and they actually gave us access sooner. So we had a real jump start on many of our like our zucchini and stuff. So we were able to harvest a lot of zucchinis early on. Then we got a pest, and we're very, one of the rules is that you can't really use pesticides. So, our plant did get a squash bug that actually, kind of took over and wiped out those zucchini plants. But we had already gotten so many zucchinis, which was great. We always put in some herbs as well. So we already have harvested a lot of that, and now it's kind of getting its second growth because we tried a new plant this year, a new type of basil plant. And then we're right about now, we're getting tomatoes. We also got a cucumber bug. So we just pulled a lot of our plants that had some disease from the bugs, the pests. And we're going to do a second planting of like a winter crop. So, you kind of have, really kind of, you have to participate with the weather and, the stuff that goes on. So, we're learning a lot about, okay, if something happens, you just have to address it. And, it is giving us this opportunity, believe it or not, in a positive sense, to kickstart our winter crop now. So I don't know if that makes, if that answers the question, but.
No, that makes sense to me, kind of walking through the whole year in your garden. I guess related to that, I think you've already talked about you know, the changing climate and planting earlier. But how else has the garden changed since you first came?
How has it changed? Well, I see more people coming by. We were able to share some of our crop not too long ago with a woman who came by because we had so many cucumbers. I remember actually that was last year. Because now they have that boating thing and there's a lot more people walking there. And then actually people, while we were there, came over and asked how you get a plot, but all the plots are, you know, going strong. And I am grateful that because we've been there, we always are asked, do we want to continue again? So to be honest, I'm really grateful that we've been there from the very beginning. I don't know. I mean, maybe if there's more people who want to do it, maybe they'll make it bigger. I don't know. It's, you know, it's the other thing that has changed, and I'm assuming because I did chat with this person a little bit, the beekeeper, I think did some work on the grapes, the really old grapevine, and they put in an arch, and it's a beautiful border and entryway from where the parking lot is now to kind of pull people through that that vine and to go straight back to where there's like some benches and the boating and stuff like that. In the beginning, I never saw grapes growing, and now there's grapes growing there. So he must have done something to promote it to be more trained, and you know, and the bees are there, so I'm sure that helps to pollinate. And so yeah, so you know, I mean, gardens take time, so you know, people kind of doing things, I think there's definitely some changes happening. I also saw in another part of that, you know, I consider the whole place a garden. There's such old growth there. I'm assuming it was the city came in to get rid of some of the old trees that were kind of dying, and some groups came in and did some weeding around. And so that was a real positive thing to see, because I love trees, and there are some beautiful trees there that are wonderful specimens to talk, you know, to my people about, you know, identifying different, you know, different species of bushes and trees, because we do that too. So yeah, it's and more people are there now. It's a blessing and a curse, right? That little place that no one ever was and was like this little hidden secret, now has a lot more people, but it's really you know, that's really good. We actually my group actually went to a prom, and we went to the gazebo right at the river's edge to do pictures, because you know, it's a place that we knew beautiful pictures would be, you know, to take pictures of them in their gowns and stuff and their tuxes. And Ryan got to bring his family there because we were getting the photos, and I was like, oh, look, you know, you get to show your mom and dad our garden, because they had never been there. So yeah, so Glen Foerd just affords us a lot of things.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't imagine like that would be a really good place for any photo shoot. And it'd be and like you say, it'd be a great place to bring family and look at the different trees, like and the different birds. I remember so many little like lindens and these interesting weeping hemlocks, I think they're called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so beautiful. But and to your point about the grapes, I just have to say, yeah, when I've never seen better grapes in Philadelphia. And I used to live, I mean, which is maybe not saying much because I haven't seen that many grapes in Philadelphia, but I used to live next to a neighbor for a few years. And all their grapes are eaten or dropped off every year because of all the lantern flies. And these grapes at
Oh,
Glen Foerd are just amazing and big, and it doesn't look, you wouldn't guess that they're, historic grapevines or that they've just started, producing more in the past couple of years.
I think it was really due to whoever put them up on, on that trellis thing or whatever you want to call it, and actually pruned it back at the right time. I think all those things brought them back into production. So yeah, it's just lovely to see that.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful site for a garden. And that said, speaking of the garden and stories about it, do you have any favorite stories about Glen Foerd Community Garden, your work with it?
So can you think about well, one of the things that's so nice, I'll share, we always go there, and while we're there, because of the easiness of taking photographs with your phone, we take photos of every time we come there so that we can go back and look at our progress, share with friends and family, and kind of toot our horn a little bit, right? Like, look at how good our zucchini, plants are doing. And it was funny because I shared with SBR, and one of the women there is like, my zucchinis are not doing that good, so it kind of is like, what are you doing that we're not doing? Or I said, well, I think the trick was we started really early, and recently we were really grateful we got new soil put in the beds, and our beds have seen tremendous a tremendous difference because of the new soil. And we would always kind of put cow manure in every year to kind of increase the organics, but yeah, that I don't know where they got it, but it really helped. And so anyway, Ryan gets to share with his family. He has a thing called a portal, and it's like a continuous slideshow. So when people come to visit, there's always pictures popping up of the garden. So, maybe a picture tells a story.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if you want to submit any pictures, I'd be happy to archive them in this interview.
Oh, yes, I could totally send you pictures.
Yeah.
And I have pictures of all our folks doing jobs, like Ryan, digging and weeding and watering and stuff like that. So yeah, we can do that for sure.
Okay.
Should I just send them like in an email?
Yeah, that works for me. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, if you wanted, I'd be happy if you wanted to like screen share and share a photo right now. But I know we didn't talk about them beforehand. So
I
But-
can, so I'm not so great on the technology thing. I don't know. So I am right now on my iPad, but and I don't know if hold on a second, let me see if I can do this. Let me find one. So let's see. So this is Bobby just the other day watering. And that's our sunflowers. That's the plot with all the flowers.
Yes. Those, yeah,
And
yeah, those flowers are like over like 6 feet tall, like.
they're huge. Yeah. Now, here's the great thing. It was so wonderful this happened because at the end of every season, they ask us to pull everything out of the bed.
Mhm.
Well, 5 of those sunflowers reseeded from last year. So they had a jump start on planting because, plus they're probably a stronger seed because, they're from last year's plant and, it had been
Mhm.
growing there. So, that was one of our seeds actually. So that was kind of fun. That's a fun story, actually.
Yeah, that's really
Uh,
cool.
Yeah.
And you also
Oh,
have a hose in the photo, which I know is not necessarily super impressive, but I know that is that a more recent thing that you got 2 hoses in the garden?
I love those hoses. Yes, we got 2 new hoses. Sorry about that. And I was so excited because they're the new hoses that are lightweight. And one of the things when you're dragging the hose, you can hit other plants, like other people's plants. So it's always like a 2-person job to like have one person at one end feeding, the hose as one person pulls it down the road, down the thing so that it doesn't cross into the beds, and damage people's plants.
Yeah.
So that hose is really nice because it's really lightweight. And when you turn it off, it kind of shrivels up and is much lighter to carry. So yes, that was a new added thing. Thanks for reminding me about that.
No worries. I just had a quick tour from Lisa, so everything's kind of fresh in my mind.
Okay, yeah. So then we also take pictures of the pests that we have so that we can go back and research how to address it, hopefully get rid of it, or try and, address how not to have it next year. And it gives us educational, lessons, to problem solve. And that's another thing that, this is a perfect thing. Like, I don't mind the things that we have to figure out. Gives me some, opportunity of not figuring, coming up with things to get them to research, like, well, we have something to research. We have a problem to solve here. So, let's go to the library and figure this out. The next thing I think we'll do is make connection with, Penn State, the extension group
Mhm.
that helps you troubleshoot problems in your garden. Yeah. My other community garden, we were a part of that community garden association, we actually we won some prizes actually, and in that other garden, and we got to go to the convention center. They had a big award ceremony there.
Okay, an award ceremony.
That was years ago. I'm trying to think, maybe okay, so I think we took some of our stuff that we grew over to over where the Japanese house is.
Shokuso in Fairmount.
Yeah, so we over there, they had a big community garden. You know, you brought your stuff and you were a part of this judging in the big
It sounds like I know what you're talking about, the demonstration garden in West Fairmount. Right?
yeah, there's that big isn't it like a big glass greenhouse type
Yes.
building? So in there we went, you know, we dropped stuff off and they had a big kind of expo of, you know, everyone's garden stuff and they judged it. And then I want to think we went to the convention center for something too. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look through my archives. But
It's not the flower show.
no, it wasn't the flower. I mean, I'm talking, this was like, you know, in the early 2000s when I started that garden. So I'd have to go back and look, but our garden did win some awards, which was really incredible. This garden also won an award a few years back.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think it got Distinguished Gardener or something like that, or I don't know. But that's another thing, you know, to you know, get an award is a great thing for you know, folks.
Yeah. I feel like that sounds like a good story for your community garden, Ryan. But okay, I want to be cognizant of our time, and I also I think that your point about planning to work with the Penn State Ag Extension really makes me wonder about the future of your garden. So Pat and Ryan, what are your future plans for your plots at Glen Foerd Community Garden?
Well, to keep gardening, I just found a photo that just totally reminded me of something that's great for Ryan. Since we started gardening last year, Ryan said, I want a tomato plant for my porch. And here's a picture of Ryan outside of his apartment, his own apartment. And one of the things that he wanted for sure this year was a tomato plant. And he actually has tomatoes on there. And in 1 minute, I'm gonna, and then these are mosaic pots that he made, in the art class for the tomato plant.
Wow. So you got both your art and your gardening greeting people who come to your apartment. That's really cool.
Yes.
Kind of like a little mini portfolio of everything you've learned and achieved. And also you get to eat some of it.
Yeah, so here, hold on, I'm gonna so actually we're making veggie quesadillas today, and this is his tomato from his porch garden.
So that's a beefsteak type tomato, it looks to me.
Yeah.
And it's very lovely and very red.
It's very red, yes. Speaking of those tomatoes, yeah. So here's a great picture of Ryan at the garden. Just the same like that story I was saying. Every time he's like, can I just eat one right now?
Oh, I'm with you, Ryan. I can never wait. I always, whenever I'm gardening something, I have to just start eating it if it's ready. Or you eat the weeds if you know the actual harvest isn't ready. If they're edible weeds nearby, I'll just pull them out and eat them.
Here's us with a cart, Ryan's cart actually, grabbing those zucchinis.
Yeah, wow. One of them looks about as big as your arm almost.
So here's the funny thing. Here it is. It was so big that we had to weigh it, and it was £4, 4.5, no, 5.5 pounds, because it was so funny. Lisa said that Mike, the other gentleman who works at Glen Foerd, had gone by. I guess he was like cutting grass in between, and he said they have the biggest zucchini I think I've ever seen. And Lisa called, I think she texted me actually. She's like, you better get over to the garden. You got a big zucchini and we think it's 6 pounds. So I said, you know what, Brian, we got to take this home and actually see if it is 6 pounds. So it was 5.5.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a
Not
fun
far off.
story. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
So here was some gourds that we had planted.
Nice.
And then here's one of our zinnias.
Oh, nice. That like, wow. Those like little purple petals contrasting like the yellow, like inside.
Aren't they
Very cool.
beautiful?
Yeah.
They're like, so the other thing too is which plants, handle heat well. And, that's another, so here was a pest picture, like, oh geez, we got this pest, and then, this, I was like, oh no, we have these eggs. So that's another thing we do. It's also really about observing and taking notice and, just being more aware of your surroundings. I think a garden really helps, kind of forces you to kind of do that.
Yeah, to become a naturalist a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to be aware of your surroundings. Here is our picture of our zucchinis when, they're not like that now because of that pest and the heat, but that, this was straight off right when we had started. They were incredibly huge.
Yeah. So those look like the zucchinis that could produce a 6 pound zucchini to me, or 5.5 pounds.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, here's another great shot of that plant.
Yeah, and I can see the big flowers in this one too.
Yep.
Yeah. Huge leaves, couple flowers. Yeah, very nice growth. But
yeah. And then I'm trying to see if so one of the things that we also do is, I think we kind of talked about that. We travel around to other places, other gardens. So every year we go to Solbury Orchards too, and we pick from their trees. And we did zucchini bread this year from our zucchinis. And I think we did the quesadillas, because one of Ryan's favorites is the quesadillas. But yeah, we like to travel around to other places to get stuff to mix. So we made apple pie last year, and our goal this year, we also made pickles, homemade pickles, and we gave them away for gifts, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, so
the future of your work with Glen Foerd is continue to keep making quesadillas, growing prolific zucchini, and to keep learning and enjoying the experience in the garden.
does that sound about right on?
Yes.
Yes. Well, good luck to you, Ryan. I'm very excited to see. I'm excited to see your tomatoes. I'm glad that you're able to grow some on right outside your apartment entrance. And yeah. So thank you both, Pat and Ryan. It's been a great time, and I've enjoyed learning about you and the great work that you're doing at Glen Foerd Community Garden, how much you've learned and about those quesadillas you're going to make today, as you have in the past. So.
Thank you for doing these interviews and thinking of us.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's my joy to learn about, the work that gardeners around Philly are doing. And I'm hoping that once I put this on YouTube, people will also, get excited about it and maybe look at their own tomatoes as potential ingredients in a quesadilla. But yeah, that said, thanks again for your time. I'm going to shut off the recording now.